I had just gotten home after a long day at the office, thinking I'd find my wife, Jessica, in the kitchen making dinner. Jessica worked too, but she usually finished by 5, while I didn't roll in until closer to 6. Most days, she'd have dinner on the table by the time I walked in. We'd sit down together, talk about how the day went, maybe watch a bit of TV, and then head to bed. Most nights, we'd end things by making love before falling asleep. But today? Well, today was nothing like what I'd imagined. When I stepped into the apartment, the scene that greeted me was far from normal. Jessica was on the couch, but she wasn't alone. She was sitting with Thomas Blackwell. Thomas was an attorney over at Langford and Associates, the firm where Jessica worked as a secretary. The first thing I noticed was that they were holding hands. Before I could even wrap my head around it or say a word, Jessica spoke up. "Sit down, Jack. We need to talk." "About what? And why the hell are you holding hands with your boss?" Jessica's eyes darted to Thomas, who gave her a small, reassuring nod before she went on. "That's exactly what we need to talk about. Please, just sit down." "I think I'd rather stand," I replied, feeling a knot of tension coil up in my chest. She took a deep breath and finally said it. "There's no easy way to say this, but Thomas and we've fallen in love. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to marry him. He's already handled all the legal stuff. All you need to do is sign. I'm not asking for anything, just my clothes, my jewelry, and my personal belongings. Once you sign, it'll all be done in 90 days. Thomas reached for the stack of papers sitting beside him and started walking toward me. He opened his mouth to say something. "Jack, you just need to." But before he could finish, my right foot shot forward, landing square in his groin. He crumpled immediately, dropping the papers as he doubled over, clutching himself. As he bent forward, I didn't hesitate. I balled up my fist and swung, hitting him square in the jaw. He hit the floor hard. "You miserable piece of trash!" I yelled, kicking him again. "It doesn't matter if she chased after you or if you came after her, you knew she was married." Jessica just sat there, too shocked to say anything. Thomas was on the floor, groaning in agony. I turned my rage on her, yanked her up from the couch, and she started to struggle, screaming. I dragged her into the bedroom, completely ignoring her protests. Throwing her face down on the bed, I ripped the bedsheet into strips and tied her wrists, gagging her so she couldn't say another word. Then I stormed back into the living room, grabbed Thomas by his collar, and dragged him to the bedroom, too. I tossed him onto the bed next to Jessica and tied him up as well. Standing there, looking at the two of them bound on the bed together, I felt a laugh bubbling up inside me. The ridiculousness of it all hit me like a freight train. How about this? The two lovebirds all tied up together, while the husband just watches. Real kinky, don't you think? They stared at me in silence as I packed my things, emptying out my dresser and closet. Before walking out of the room, I snapped a quick photo of them lying there, tied up and helpless. "Don't go anywhere, all right?" I sneered. I grabbed whatever I could quickly and loaded it into my truck. I'd come back later for the bigger stuff. Once the truck was packed, I went back inside, rummaged through Jessica's purse, and grabbed her money and credit cards before making one last trip to the bedroom. They were still there, wriggling against the ropes, trying to break free. I stood in the doorway, watching for a moment, then said, "When I hit the city limits, I'll call someone to come help you out. If I'm lucky, I'll never have to see either of you again. Or maybe I'll wait until I'm 1,000 miles away before I make that call. Either way, you'll only have to wait a year to file for divorce on the grounds of abandonment. In the meantime, enjoy your cuddle session." With that, I turned and walked out. As I drove away, I couldn't help but wonder why I'd acted like such an asshole. But deep down, I knew exactly why. It wasn't just the fact that Jessica wanted out, I could have accepted that. If she had come to me, told me she had fallen for someone else, I wouldn't have liked it, but I would have let her go. What really cut deep was the way they handled it. Sitting there, holding hands like it was just some business deal, sliding divorce papers my way as if it was no big deal. It was cold, calculated, and that's what I couldn't forgive. But I wasn't finished messing with them just yet. I had come home expecting dinner, and since that didn't happen, I decided I'd head over to the village inn for a bite. After dessert, I planned to call Jessica's sister, Rachel, and let her be the one to handle the mess I left behind. Let her find Jessica and her new lover tied up together. It seemed like the perfect way to spread the news. As I sat there eating, my mind wandered. If Jessica was so head over heels for Thomas, why had she kept sleeping with me, acting like nothing had changed? Right up until that little surprise in our living room, things had seemed normal. I'd probably never get an answer to that question. Once I finished my apple pie, I picked up the phone and dialed Rachel. I told her I'd left her sister and her sister's boyfriend tied up in our apartment bedroom, then hung up before she could ask any questions. Hopefully, my mention of being 1,000 miles away would make them think I was long gone, keeping them from looking for me. In reality, I wasn't going far at all, just to the other side of town. After leaving the restaurant, I checked into a comfort lodge for the night. Then, I made another call, this time to my boss. I explained the situation, told him I needed a couple of days off, and asked him to go along with it if Jessica reached out. I wanted him to say I'd suddenly quit, mumbled something about heading to Florida, and left town. He agreed but added, "You know she's going to spot you eventually, or someone will mention seeing you around, right?" "Yeah, I know," I replied, "but this is just about screwing with her for as long as I can. Might only be a day or two, but I'll take what I can get." The next morning, I went to the bank, and that's when I found out Jessica hadn't been entirely truthful with me. She said she only wanted her personal things, but she'd already been in the day before and cleaned out half of our checking and savings accounts. Next, I checked the safe deposit box. Lucky for me, it seemed like she'd forgotten about it. Inside, the certificates of deposit were still there, which was another opportunity to get back at her. Those certificates totaled $12,000, money we'd been saving for a down payment on a house. We'd both been putting 10% of our net income into savings, and whenever we hit $2,000, we'd buy a certificate. The goal was to save $20,000. But the real treasure was the family jewelry tucked inside the box, passed down from Jessica's great-great-grandmother. That jewelry had been appraised at $82,000. It had always been a source of tension between Jessica and Rachel. Rachel thought she was owed half, while Jessica insisted that, as the firstborn, it was rightfully hers and would be passed down to her daughter someday, whenever she had one. Jessica was going to lose her mind when she realized the jewelry was gone. I decided to hold on to it until she noticed, let her blow up about it, and then hand it over to Rachel. The next morning, I rented a U-Haul and waited until I was sure Jessica had left for work. I swung by the apartment to grab the bigger items I wanted. But when my key didn't work, I cursed myself for calling Rachel before the hardware store had closed. Still, the lease had my name on it, and I hadn't been slapped with any kind of restraining order, yet. I had every right to be there. Breaking in wasn't too hard. I'd deal with the cost of the busted door later, that was the least of my concerns right now. In about 45 minutes, I had everything I needed packed up and loaded into the U-Haul. An hour later, I had it all moved into a storage unit. Before I left the apartment, I made a few calls. First, I canceled our joint credit cards. Then, I reached out to Lisa from the property management company to let her know about the broken door. I promised I'd follow up in a few days to sort out the repair costs. I'd known Lisa for years, so when she asked what happened, I didn't hold back. After hearing the whole story, she burst out laughing. "Wait, you really left them tied up together in bed? That's hilarious. This is going to spread like wildfire. Looks like you're finally free, for me." I couldn't help but grin. And what about Mike? I asked. She shrugged. Oh, he pulled the same move Grace did. Hooked up with some girl from his office, then told me he loved her more than me. You still got my number? I asked. I sure do, she replied. And don't be shy about using it when you're ready. We'll catch up soon. After that, I swung by the library and checked out a stack of books. My plan was simple: lay low, work during the day, and spend my evenings reading. The less I was out in public, the less chance there was of running into Jessica, or anyone she might have sent to track me down. Realistically, though, I knew I couldn't afford the motel for much longer, so I gave Lisa another call. She tipped me off about a quiet apartment complex on the far side of town from my old place and even called the manager to smooth the way for me. Within a few days, I had moved into my new spot, hoping to fly under the radar. I knew sticking around town came with its risks. From what Jessica had told me in the past, Thomas was pretty close to securing a partnership at the firm, and I was banking on him not wanting to stir up any trouble that might bring his affair with a married employee into the spotlight. That could wreck his career. I figured he'd talk Jessica into keeping quiet, not wanting to press charges for the little incident back at the apartment. By the end of the week, I had settled into my new place. My boss let me know that Jessica had called, and he'd stuck to the story about me heading to Florida. That gave me a good laugh. Around 11 that night, I called Lisa to check on the bill for the broken door. She told me not to worry about it. Apparently, Jessica had already taken care of it. Then, with a teasing tone, she asked, "So, when are we going on our first date?" I chuckled. "I'm trying to keep a low profile, remember?" She laughed. "Come over to my place for dinner tonight. We'll catch up, and you won't have to worry about being spotted." "What time?" "6 sound good?" She gave me directions, and I told her I'd be there. As I drove to Lisa's place, memories of her came flooding back. We had been on again, off again throughout high school, almost making it to the point of going steady. Her hand had been the first to touch me intimately, and I had been her first in a few ways too. Before we could take things further, though, her dad got promoted, and her family moved out of state. I didn't even know she was back in town until I bumped into her at the property management office. By then, I was already married to Jessica. I arrived at her place right on time. We sat at her kitchen table, chatting while she finished up dinner. Lisa told me all about the move to Colorado after her dad's promotion, and how much she loved living out there. She admitted she still dreamed about going back one day. "If you loved it so much, why didn't you stay?" I asked. She let out a sigh. "My dad died in an industrial accident, and my mom was a mess. She needed me, so I came back with her. She's doing better now, but I haven't saved up enough to move back yet. Someday, though, I'm still hoping." Wendy wanted the full scoop on what had happened with Jessica, and I didn't hold back. She was in stitches by the time I finished, and she joked that I should have blown up the picture of them tied up in bed, framed it, and hung it on the wall with a caption like, "The lovebirds relaxing after a hard day." I couldn't help but laugh, and I told her that I had actually taken a photo on my phone right before I left. She was eager to see it, so I pulled out my phone and showed it to her. Wendy practically doubled over laughing. We had a great time that night, and before she left, I invited her over for dinner at my place the next evening. She was more than happy to accept. The next night, we had a nice dinner at my apartment, and afterward, we settled on the couch to watch a movie. Somewhere in the middle of the film, I realized we were holding hands. I don't even know when or how it happened, but there we were. I glanced over at her, and she was already looking at me. When she noticed the look on my face, she asked, "Ever wonder how things might have turned out for us if my dad hadn't moved us to Colorado?" "Every other day since I saw you again when you came in to sign the lease," I replied. She gave me a soft smile. "Do you think there's still something between us?" I hesitated before answering. "I'd like to think so, but I'm not ready to jump into anything until I'm officially done with Jessica. Why wait? She said. If you're done with her, you're done with her. Maybe, but I'm still married. I made vows, and I'm trying to honor them, at least until it's legally over, I explained. But she broke hers, Wendy pointed out. Doesn't that set you free? You're right, but I'm just not wired that way, I said. I messed up by not letting them serve me the papers yet. Once I'm served and sign the papers, then I'll feel free of my vows. It's not like flipping a switch. I loved that woman, and I thought she loved me, too. I paused for a moment, then added, some people can shut off love just like that, but not me. It's going to take time for me to get over Jessica. We were together for 8 years, and I thought they were good years. I just need to get through the legal side of it first. How long do you think that'll take? Wendy asked. The papers are ready. All I have to do is make myself available to be served. The fastest way would probably be to just walk into her office and ask for them, but I'm not ready to do that yet. Besides, part of me is still enjoying keeping her in the dark, messing with her a bit. I leaned back on the couch and let out a sigh. Truth is, there's no rush. We need time to get to know each other again. It's been 12 years since we were split up, and we're different people now. And let's be honest, there's a pretty big elephant in the room, I was in love with Jessica. I thought we had a solid marriage until she blindsided me with the affair. And here's the kicker, the night before it all came out, we made love 3 times. She knew exactly what she was going to do, but she still kissed me goodbye the next morning and told me to have a great day. I shook my head, trying to push the memories aside. Enough about that. I've decided I'm not going to hide from Jessica anymore. If she finds me, she finds me. Now, let's talk about our first real date. What do you want to do? Wendy grinned. Depends. If it's the weekend, dinner and dancing. If it's a weekday, dinner and a movie. All right, how about this? My Thursdays are booked until September, so let's do dinner and a movie on Wednesday, and then dinner and dancing on Saturday. Sounds perfect, she said, smiling. But what about Friday? We'll figure that out on Wednesday, I suggested. Nope, let's settle it now, she insisted. How about dinner at my place on Friday? Isn't that a little too much of me in such a short time? I teased. She shot back with a playful smile. If I have my way, I'm going to end up with all of your time anyway. Looks like Friday's covered, then, I said with a grin. Wednesday's date with Wendy went great, ending with a soft, unexpected kiss when I dropped her off at her place. Feeling more at ease with my decision not to hide from Jessica anymore, I decided to show up at the bowling alley on Thursday. At first, I'd considered stepping away from the team since a few of Jessica's friends bowled in the same league. I didn't want them running back to her and telling her that I hadn't disappeared like she might have thought. Our league was mixed, and one of the women worked with Jessica, while another guy and girl had gone to school with her and still kept in touch. As luck would have it, that Thursday night, our team was up against the one with Jessica's coworker, Holly. Knowing my name might come up at Jessica's office the next day, I figured I might as well stir things up a bit. During one of the breaks, I casually asked Holly if she knew how long Jessica's thing with her boss had been going on. Her face said it all, but she just shrugged and said, I don't know what you're talking about. No need to play coy, I said. Jessica and Thomas already laid their cards on the table. She wants a divorce so she can marry him. I'm just curious how long she's been keeping me in the dark. I didn't see it coming. Holly hesitated, then finally said, I'd guess about 8 months. Honestly, we all think she's crazy for giving you up for that guy. Is it true you kicked him in the crotch? I just smiled, not confirming or denying anything. Then she asked, are you going to fight the divorce? Why fight for someone who doesn't want me? I replied. Holly leaned in a little, grinning. So, once this is all over, Do you think I might have a chance when you're ready to start dating again? I laughed. I'll keep you in mind, but honestly, by the time I'm back on the market, I doubt someone like you will still be available. She gave me a playful smirk. I've heard good things are worth waiting for. Think you'd be able to work with Jessica if we ended up together? I asked. I'd love to see her regret leaving you. Once she realizes what a mistake she made, it'll be fun to watch her squirm, Holly said. Here's hoping, I nodded. I'd like to see that too. All in all, it turned out to be a pretty good night. My team won 2 out of the 3 games, I hit a lucky 217 in the second game, and my ego got a nice boost from the attention of someone as attractive as Holly. Friday's date with Wendy was nice, but Saturday? That's where things took an unexpected turn. We started with dinner at Duke's Steakhouse and then headed over to Honky Tonk Hall for some dancing. The Honky Tonk was a country western spot with live bands on the weekends. Carlos Washington was playing that night, and Wendy and I were out on the dance floor doing the cowboy cha-cha when I spotted Alice Turner, Jessica's sister, walk in. She was with her boyfriend and some guy I didn't recognize, and wouldn't you know it, they ended up taking the table right next to ours. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came a few moments later, when Grace walked in and joined them. I had already made peace with the idea of not hiding from her, but seriously. Out of all the tables, she had to sit at the one right next to ours. And where was Thomas? Was she already stepping out on him, too? I figured the guy with her was her date for the night. I leaned in and gave Wendy a heads up. She just laughed and said, "Oh, this is going to be interesting." As the song ended, we headed back to our table. Grace still had her back to us, but Alice was facing our way. The surprise on her face when she saw me was clear as day, but she didn't say anything to Grace, she never turned around. By then, I had already decided I wasn't sticking around. I'd leave without paying the tab. The next song was a waltz, and Alice, along with the rest of her group, headed out onto the dance floor. That's when Grace spotted me. The shock on her face was unmistakable, but her dance partner already had her by the arm, leading her onto the floor. She didn't take her eyes off me the entire time they danced around the room. When the song ended, and the band announced a break, Alice and her group returned to their table. That's when Jessica decided to confront me. "Who's your friend, Jack?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I smiled. "You remember Lisa, don't you? From the leasing office." Jessica gave Lisa a quick glance and sneered. "Do you always date married men?" Lisa laughed and shot back, "Only the ones whose foolish wives throw them away." Jessica's face turned bright red with anger. She snapped her head back to me, her voice sharper now. "What are you even doing here, Jack? I thought you left town." "I'm here to drink and dance," I said, keeping my tone calm. "Same reason anyone else comes here, I suppose. Clearly, I haven't left, since you're standing here talking to me." "Where are you living?" she pressed. "That's none of your business. Why don't you head back to your table, Jessica? I'd rather enjoy my time with my date." Her voice tightened. "You know I hate being called Jessica." "Tough luck, Jessica," I said flatly. "After what you and your sleazy boss pulled, I don't care what you like. Does Thomas know you're out with another guy tonight? Maybe I should give him a heads up." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "I don't have a date. I'm just here with Alice and Randy. I didn't know Bill would be with them." I raised my voice just enough for the nearby table to hear. "Hey, Alice, is Bill Jessica's date tonight?" Alice shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not getting involved, Jack." Her silence told me all I needed to know. "Thanks for clearing that up," I said with a smirk. Jessica's face flushed with frustration. "I'm not." Before she could finish, Lisa cut in, her tone firm. "If you don't want to end up in a hair-pulling contest, I suggest you walk away from our table, now." Jessica shot us a nasty glare before storming back to her seat. Lisa smiled at me, a mischievous glint in her eye. I haven't had this much fun in ages. The band came back, and we hit the dance floor for a couple more songs. By the time we returned to our table, Alice and her group were gone. As we sat down, Lisa asked, "Are you really thinking about telling Jessica's lawyer boyfriend about her and this Bill guy?" I shook my head. Nah. If she's cheating on him, he's getting what he deserves. After all, he started this whole mess by getting involved with a married woman. I'll let her sweat a little, though, let her wonder if I'll ever mention it to him. Might stir things up between them. Maybe he'll start thinking once a cheater, always a cheater. Lisa laughed. You've got a delightfully wicked mind, don't you? I just smiled. Later, when I dropped Lisa off, she gave me a long, heated kiss. On the drive home, I couldn't help but wonder if there might be something real between us. We had shared a lot back in high school, but was that just teenage infatuation, or could it grow into something more? The next day, I called Alice and asked her to meet me at the bar after work. I told you, Jack, I don't want to get involved, she said. I'm not asking you to get involved. I just need to talk to you about something, and it's not about Jessica. All right, she agreed, but if you bring up Jessica or anything between you two, I'm out of there. Fair enough, I said. I got to Bud's a little early and decided the best way to approach this was to just hand her the box with the jewelry and see where the conversation went from there. That way, I wouldn't be the one to mention Jessica first and risk Alice getting up to leave. When Alice arrived, she spotted me and walked over. I already had her usual drink waiting for her on the table. She sat down, took a sip, and looked at me. Okay, Jack, what's this all about? She asked. Without saying a word, I picked up the box from the seat next to me and set it in front of her. What's this? She asked. Open it and find out, I replied. She put her drink down, opened the box, and instantly recognized what was inside. Her expression softened as she lifted a diamond necklace from the box, turning it over in her hands. Mom used to let me wear this when I was a kid, playing dress up. Where did you find it? I explained how I'd come into possession of the jewelry and added, I know you always felt like you should have gotten half when your mom passed, so now it's all yours. You can keep half and give the other half to Jessica if you want, or keep all of it. Whether you tell her or not is up to you. When she finally realizes the safe deposit box is empty, she'll come asking, and I'll just tell her I pawned it. Alice gave me a curious look. Why didn't you pawn it, then? That would have really hit her where it hurts. I shook my head. I couldn't do that, Jules. Those are family heirlooms, and as much as I wanted to get back at Jessica, it would feel wrong to take them away from you. You've always been good to me, and I couldn't steal from you like that. Alice smiled softly. Honestly, Jack, I've always thought I should have met you first, before Jessica did. She gently placed the necklace back in the box and looked at me with gratitude. You don't know how much this means to me, Jack. Thank you. She stood up, clutching the box, and with a parting smile, said, Stay in touch, Jack, before heading out the door. It couldn't have played out better if I had planned it. The very next day, Jessica showed up at my job. She walked right up to me, her eyes blazing. Where's my jewelry? She demanded. How'd you know I was here? I asked, caught off guard. When I figured out you hadn't left town, I assumed this is where you'd be. Now, where's my jewelry? I got rid of it, I said casually. Jessica's face tightened in anger. What do you mean you got rid of it? That jewelry was mine. You had no right. I think I did, I replied calmly. The money I got when I pawned it helped cover what you took out of our accounts. Her face went pale. Wait, you pawned it? Yep, I said without missing a beat. Damn you, Jack. You had no right to do that, she nearly shouted. I disagree. You lied to me. You said all you wanted were your personal belongings, clothes, jewelry, stuff like that. You never mentioned the money. She crossed her arms, visibly frustrated. Come on, Jack. You should have known I wanted my share of the money. Yeah, well, there were a lot of things I should have known, Jessica, like the fact that my wife was a cheating, backstabbing liar. But I didn't. And let's be clear here, you didn't just take your share. You took more than half. No, I didn't. There was $16,425.48 in the account. You took $8,300, which is $87.26 more than your half. So, I pawned your jewelry to cover that. Now we're even. Her eyes widened in disbelief. $87.26. Jack, that jewelry was worth over $55,000. I shrugged. Was it? Well, I guess that's my loss. But here's the deal. According to the pawn shop, you've got 60 days to redeem it. Actually, it's 51 now. So, I'll make you an offer. I'll sell you the pawn ticket for $11,000. Jessica stared at me, stunned. How am I supposed to come up with that kind of money? I smiled faintly. Maybe your new man can help you out. Her eyes narrowed. Or I could just call the cops and tell them you stole my jewelry. Go ahead, I said calmly. Do you have anything proving that the jewelry was in the safe deposit box? I asked, my voice calm. Anything at all to show you even had it? Jessica's face tightened in frustration. This isn't over, Jack, she snapped. Get out of here, Jessica. This is a place of business, and you're making a scene, I replied, my patience thinning. I'll report you for assaulting me and Thomas, she shot back. I smirked. Go ahead, and I'll sue Thomas for alienation of affection. I'll also go after the law firm for not enforcing their policy against supervisors having relationships with subordinates. That might make his chances of becoming a partner pretty slim, don't you think? Best if you leave now, Jessica, before you dig a deeper hole for yourself. And here's something to chew on, if you'd just been honest with me, told me you didn't love me anymore, I'd have been hurt, sure, but I would have let you go, without all this drama. Now, get out. Jessica stared at me for a long moment, her eyes full of anger, before she finally turned and walked out. Did I think she was done stirring the pot? Not for a second. I knew Jessica too well for that. She wasn't the type to let things go. She'd try to find another way to get to me, one where I couldn't fight back. But I didn't think she'd succeed. At least, I hoped I wasn't wrong. The very next day, a man showed up at my workplace and asked for me. Katie, our receptionist, paged me, and when I arrived at the front desk, she pointed to a man who was busy studying one of the plaques on the wall. I approached him. Can I help you? I asked. Jack Keller, he asked. That's me, I confirmed. He handed me an envelope. You've been served. Good luck, he said before turning and walking out. I opened the envelope and quickly scanned the documents. Just like Jessica had said, they were straightforward, no alimony, no surprises. I signed the papers, slipped them into the pre-addressed envelope, and dropped them in the outgoing mail tray on Katie's desk. Getting a divorce? She asked. Looks like it, I replied. Well, put my name on the list when you're ready to start looking again, she said, surprising me. You're serious? I asked. Absolutely, she said with a grin. As I headed back to the shop, I couldn't help but wonder what it was that other women saw in me that Jessica didn't. First Wendy, then Holly, and now Katie. It was a nice boost for my bruised ego, no doubt about that. Later on, I called Wendy and told her I'd been served, and that in my mind, I was now officially free from my vows. She mentioned she had a bridal shower to attend that evening but invited me over for a celebratory dinner the next night. I told her it was a date. That evening, I was at home finishing up a TV dinner when my phone rang. It was Alice. "You're a real piece of work, Jack Keller," she said, her voice teasing. "Who, me?" I replied, playing along. "I just spent the last 30 minutes listening to my sister bawling her eyes out about what you did with her jewelry. She went to Thomas, begging him for the $10,000 to buy back the pawn ticket from you, but he told her he didn't have the money until the next quarterly bonus, which is over 2 months away. She was beside herself, Jack, absolutely in tears, with no idea what to do since she's only got 50 days left to get her stuff back. So, I took pity on her. I told her I had the jewelry and that I'd give it back, as long as I could keep the necklace. She jumped at the offer. So, thanks to you, I've got my necklace, and my sister is endlessly grateful to me." I chuckled. "Remember what I said? Keep in touch, all right?" Alice laughed. "Will do, Jack. Will do." Whether I would or not depended a lot on how things played out with Wendy. Sure, we had something back in high school, but maybe that was just teenage curiosity. When I arrived at Wendy's place for dinner, it was clear she'd gone all out. Wendy was waiting for me in a stunning dress and heels, and the table was set with candles, a bottle of wine, and 2 glasses. "Perfect timing," she said with a smile. "Dinner's ready. If you pour the wine, I'll bring the food." She brought the plates over, sat down across from me, and raised her wine glass. "Here's to new beginnings," she said warmly. I smiled and clinked my glass against hers. "To new beginnings," I agreed. Dinner was incredible, and the atmosphere couldn't have been more romantic. Candles flickering, wine flowing, and easy conversation between us. The only thing missing was a bit of soft music in the background. Wendy wasn't shy about where she saw the evening heading. After we finished eating, she grinned playfully and said, "Dessert will be in the bedroom." As we undressed, she looked at me and said, "This is where I always imagined us, back before my dad's promotion." She looked amazing, just like I remembered from years ago. From there, the night unfolded naturally. We fell asleep together, and from that point on, we were pretty much a couple. I say, pretty much, because, even though I felt free after signing the divorce papers, technically, I was still married until everything was finalized. A few times, Wendy and I ran into Jessica while we were out. She never approached us, but the hostility in her glances was impossible to miss. A week after the divorce became official, I got down on one knee in front of Wendy and asked her to marry me. Fast forward to now, I was in the basement, working on a cradle for the twins we were expecting in about 3 months. That's when I heard the basement door creak open, followed by Alice's voice. "He's here, honey." I wrapped up what I was doing, put away my tools, vacuumed up the sawdust, and washed my hands before heading upstairs. My father-in-law was already settled on the couch with a drink, thanks to Alice. She brought me a beer and then sat on my lap, sipping her margarita as we all talked, waiting for the turkey to finish cooking. The conversation mostly revolved around the twins, whether we'd finally picked names and why we were so stubborn about not finding out the babies' genders before they were born. But, as usual, the conversation eventually shifted to a familiar topic. This time, it was my father-in-law who brought it up. "So, have you heard from your sister lately?" he asked. "Not since the last time I mentioned it." "Have you?" I replied. "Nope, not a word. I just wonder what's going on with her." "I'm not calling her to find out," I said firmly. "If she wants to talk, she'll call me. But I'm not making the first move. Last I heard, she left him because of his cheating and is planning to file for divorce. Frank always said one of them would cheat within the first year of marriage." My father-in-law gave me a knowing look. I just shrugged, patting Alice's baby bump with a smile. "Doesn't matter to me. I'm the one who ended up with the prize." "I've got you," I said to Alice. He chuckled, shaking his head. "I get more free drinks at the lodge thanks to you too." I must be the only father in the state whose son-in-law married both of his daughters. I still don't get how you went from Jessica to Alice. Maybe it's better I don't know. Alice? Oh, right. I probably skipped that part of the story. You see, when I proposed to Wendy, she turned me down. Not in a harsh way, but it was still a no. She told me she liked me a lot and enjoyed our time together, but she didn't love me. Sure, I was disappointed, but I wasn't heartbroken. That's when I realized I had probably just been clinging to an old high school connection that wasn't really there anymore. I thought we could pick up where we left off, but life doesn't work like that. So, I moved on. Over the next few months, I found myself going out more often, hitting up places like Honky Tonk Hall and Trailblazer Tavern, where they had live music and line dancing. One night, I was at the Stagecoach, out on the dance floor, when I spotted Alice Turner walk in and head to the bar. After the dance, I made my way back to my table, and before long, Alice came over and asked if she could join me. I nodded, and she sat down. Right away, she cut to the chase. "Why didn't you call me?" she asked. "Why would I have called?" I replied. "I thought I made it pretty clear when I said I wished I'd met you before Jessica, and I dropped another hint when I told you to stay in touch." "Well, even if I had called, how do you think that would have worked? What about your sister and your dad? Do you really think they'd be okay with it?" Alice shrugged. "I'm not living my life to make Jessica or my dad happy. Jessica had her chance, and she blew it. She doesn't get to tell me what I can or can't do. As for my dad, he'll either be happy for me or he won't." Then she leaned in with a playful smile. "Now, how about we kick this off by you asking me to dance?" Grace, of course, wasn't thrilled when she found out, but Alice told her to get over it. Her dad, on the other hand, caught me by surprise. "Glad we can keep you in the family," he said with a grin when Alice brought me over for Sunday dinner. 6 months after that night at the Stagecoach, I proposed to Alice, and she said yes. 3 months later, we were married, and 8 months after that, we found out I was going to be a dad. And just 3 months later, we got the news, it wasn't just one baby, but twins. Am I a happy man? You bet I am.